Good afternoon, everyone. It's 3:31 p.m. I'm calling this meeting of the Maple Broadband Executive Committee to order for the 17th of October, 2024. Happy, beautiful October afternoon day to everyone. Hope that everyone's getting a little bit of outdoor time today. So the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda. I would like to suggest that we explicitly add to the agenda a review of the Q3 financials that I sent out. I didn't have them when I sent out the agenda, and I took away the other because we were never using it. So, guess that's what I get for taking away the other. So,
yeah, I'd also like to add a couple items to the agenda.
Okay.
Chair report. I think that dropped off.
Sorry. I dropped off because you weren't here.
There was a time when there was no chair on the call, so. And then I'd also like to talk about the annual report. Whether we want to just include that on something else, that's fine. But if we could find a home for that, that'd be helpful.
Okay, so let's put the annual report under the draft 2025 budget row because that's where it was before. I just thought we didn't need to talk about it because we talked about it before, but I guess you weren't here. Okay, so I'm going to put the Q3 financials as 5B in the budget. And annual report will be 5C, and then actually technically 6C, and the parking lot will be D, and the chair report will be back in its usual place. Okay. Does that work for everyone? Okay. Someone like to move to approve the agenda with those changes?
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Great.
Second.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Maybe Jeff can't hear us yet.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were on minutes. Sorry.
Okay. Nope, we're not on minutes. We're on agenda. Okay, great. We have an agenda. So next up was approval of the minutes from October 3rd.
I would move to approve them with one minor correction. Shacksboro should be changed to Starksboro, unless Nancy is moved.
Oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. Okay. Any other second for that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
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 Steve, you weren't here last week, were you?
Nope, I'm abstaining. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm on it.
Okay. All right. So that was Shannon, Carl, and Nancy have approved, and Steve and Jeff are abstaining because they weren't here. Okay. Great. So next up is public comments. Would anyone like to make a public comment? All right. Steve, over to you. And apologies for forgetting you. That's what I get with my copy paste from the last time. It seemed like a short agenda.
Yeah, I think you were usually before me, but I'm happy to do it now. One moment, please. I wasn't as ready as I thought I'd be. Let's see here. All right. I've got like 3 things I want to talk about, so I'm going to get rid of some of these things. Where is it? Apologize for, oh, there it is. So, days before I headed out on vacation, Ellie and I met with the Middlebury Infrastructure Committee to talk about a desired hub somewhere in Middlebury, and part of that process was giving them a kind of an overview of our network and what it looks like. Most of these slides, there's only 5 of them, but I probably thought it might be helpful to see them once again. So I'll walk through them very briefly just to kind of help you understand, and part of what we want to help Middlebury understand. So as you've seen this multiple times before, those green circles represent a serving area, and inside each serving area there is a splitter cabinet and fiber is extended from each splitter cabinet out to those addresses that are represented by these little squares at the end of the spokes of those wheels. Also, what you've seen before, slightly modified. I made that little orange dot with spikes on it to represent a network hub. And as you're aware, we have a hub in Cornwall, Shoreham, and Orwell, and we're in the fits and starts associated with getting our Leicester hub activated right now. And so everything there is shown in green. Those are all serving areas as described in the previous slide. And then we've also have these 3 serving areas that are depicted in yellow that will be lit up once we light up the Leicester hub. This is kind of a real high-level diagram of what our network looks like. It's really not necessarily correlates to the actual map locations, but it kind of helps the viewer understand what our network looks like. Those red lines are fiber optic cable, and specifically, it's actually represented by 2 strands of fiber optic cable. And so each of our hubs, with the exception of the Middlebury hub, which isn't yet in service, or we're trying to identify a location for one, and the Leicester hub, which is also pending. This is kind of graphically what our network will look like. And I think the big message that we were communicating to the folks at the Middlebury Infrastructure Committee was that if there's in the event of a cut somewhere, for example, between let's do it over here. If we have a cut fiber between the Shoreham and Orwell hub, Shoreham continues to be served because they can go back to our network provider, and then all the service could also circle back this way and connect. So we always have that ring that's in service. It's already in service now, and once we build out our Middlebury and Ripton hubs, they will be added into the ring with the same kind of resiliency that we're describing. The part that we wanted to kind of communicate concerns that we had with Middlebury, and I kind of represent general concerns, is that in the event that our Middlebury hub is located distant from the actual ring itself, then if there's a cut in that, as shown where those scissors are located, the Middlebury hub is high and dry. They're going to be out of service. So that's really a challenge for us, and it's something that we focused apparently very effectively with the Infrastructure Committee. And as we reviewed our options with our Infrastructure Committee, the head of the Infrastructure Committee, she got it. She got our concern about it, which is why generally we do our best to locate our hubs on as close to the ring as possible to avoid unintended consequences. And Carl recognizes this. This is the Shoreham hub, but we generally don't tell anybody where they are. We just say, here's a sample of one, so that everyone can get a feel for the size and location. So I think, unless we want to talk about the other stuff, I think we can wait. So let's leave it at that. If you have any questions, happy to entertain them, but I guess I can just hand the gavel back to Ellie, and then we can continue and then pick up the other items I wanted to discuss when we get to that point. So thank you. That's it.
Do you want to give an update on where we are with those hub locations, or do you want to do that when we get to the parking lot?
Oh, sure. Yeah, so things are kind of moving fast and not so fast. There's been some churn even today. We have a location in Middlebury that we're pretty excited about, and the Middlebury Infrastructure Committee caught on to the excitement in terms of it being so close to our ring, and so I think that is why when Ellie attended the meeting of the Infrastructure Committee while I was away on vacation, that appeared to rise to the top of their recommendations, and so that's again part of the town. In parallel with that is work that, and again, this is all kindled by Ellie. I'm the henchman here. Ellie was the brains behind the operation. She also reached out to the Addison Central School District to talk about hub location in Middlebury, and also a desire is to locate a hub up in Ripton. And so prior to my vacation, I did some fields visits up in Ripton to identify those locations, and as well did some shoe leather work down in Middlebury to identify some sample locations, part of which were contributed by the infrastructure committee head, and we then had a list of say 5 or 6 Middlebury locations and a couple Ripton locations. Both of those remain pending. There's going to be a need for approvals. One of the approvals relates to the fact that the top location is the stakeholders associated with our top Middlebury location are both the town and the school district. And so we need to get a couple approvals to get that accomplished. And Ellie and I are meeting with the town on this coming Tuesday to seek their approval, hopefully. And then we are waiting yet to hear when we're going to hear from the school board whether that particular location that they are also responsible for is acceptable to them. So we're making progress. We're making progress. It's maybe by the end of this month we'll have it. I think what's key for Ellie and me is that as soon as we have a fairly high level of confidence where those 2 hubs are going to go, then we can pass that information on to JSI, our engineering firm, and they can kind of nail down those locations and refine some of the details in the design. It's obviously a lot more work that they would need to do, but it would also help inform some further decisions we need to make regarding where we're going to set our splitter cabinets and things like that. So it would be very exciting for Ellie and me to get those all sorted out pretty quickly, bearing in mind the fact that at best in the next 4 to 6 weeks, we're going to have a general approval, hopefully from the stakeholders. We still need to execute easements to get those spots located. So it's not going to be kind of firmed up completely for a while, depending on how quickly we can work our way through whatever easements issues arise.
Well, look on the bright side. The BEAD time frame keeps getting extended, so no matter how slow we think this is going, we're still way ahead of schedule.
Good.
Gotta look on the bright side, right?
There you go. Well, we're like a shark, right? If you don't move forward, you're going to die, and we just keep moving. We're kind of crawling along, but it's all progress. So I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so let me move on to my report. So I just sent out maybe an hour before this meeting, so I'm not sure if everyone saw it, but the VCBB posted an updated BEAD schedule yesterday, which pushes things out by another about 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks. So, yeah, I haven't thought through how this impacts the budget, although because for our previous discussions that we had both on governing board and executive committee, part of the assumptions of the budget were that we knew we'd be successful in BEAD, and the date for pre-award expenditures would allow us to at least anticipate working on some BEAD middle mile routes and some other routes in anticipation of being able to be reimbursed. But if the schedule keeps getting pushed out further, then we miss next year's construction season, or it's something because again, with aerial work, you can always continue, but it's much slower to slice in the winter, as we've discovered. So I really have to think through what is the impact on the budget, and some of the other unknowns that were highlighted in my PowerPoint obviously are not clarified between 2 days ago and today, but hopefully will be over the coming weeks. So there's still a lot of moving pieces with this budget when we get to it. But so that is part of what I'm working on now. Part of what else I'm working on is there's an unusual quantity of VCBB reporting going on right now. So there's the usual monthly reports, and then they have a new quarterly report we need to do for ARPA, as well as the usual quarterly ARPA reports, and then also the VCBB's annual report to the legislature is due. And so the VCB has asked us for some information in relation to that. So I've just set aside some time to do VCBB reporting. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, in fairness, we've received tens of millions, well, over $15 million. So it's not excessively onerous in the grand scheme of things if you really think about the reporting that's required, but we have to do it. Yes, I've talked about BEAD. So the BEAD RFA we discussed previously, the comment period is closed. Vakuda submitted pages and pages of comments, and I submitted some under Maple Broadband. Mine were much more concise because most of the big ones would be taken care of by Vakuda, but there are still some minor clarifications that I wanted to submit. So those have been submitted. VCBB is working through them. They haven't specified when they're going to be publishing a revised RFA or the other document that they referred to around the scoring rubric and all of that. So we don't know. Having said that, we do know a lot between the Volume 2 and the draft RFA about what's required. And so aside from the BEAD budget, there's a number of other things that we can already start together now. So I've been compiling a list of the things we need to do, and some of them are easier and some of them are harder. So for example, there is the environmental permitting, and we had a conversation with Vakuda this morning around putting out an RFP under Vakuda for environmental permitting services and compliance and even guidance. Because one of the questions in the pre-application phase is, what have you done to familiarize yourselves with the NEPA requirements in order to be able to comply with program requirements? So I said, well, this is a great opportunity for Vakuda to find someone to, first of all, give us an executive briefing so I don't have to go read the NEPA Act, and then also help us with some boilerplate text that won't be a lie. So working on some of the things that are required for the pre-proposal as well as the proposal. So there's no reason to put it off to the last minute. So I want to do some of the things that we can do as early as possible. The other thing is, now that I have a draft budget, of course, I'm still working to refine the budget, but I'm able to move my attention back to the network management agreement. So I've set up a time with Steve to align some comments he had on that. I want to get forward on that. You guys will have also seen the mail I forwarded yesterday from the VCBB stating that we needed to pause all of our work under the BEAD subrecipient capacity grant program because the NTIA had flagged some problems with some agreements. So we had our call today, and at our call today, they said they didn't anticipate any problems with our agreements, but nonetheless, everyone's been told to pause. So luckily, the things that we're doing under that are essentially paused anyway. Barry Dunn is pretty much done with where they are in financial best practices, and we don't really want to get started on Match until there's clarity on Match. We're on a pause on the network management agreement until Steve and I have aligned, and then we've discussed with Waitsfield, and then JSI is basically done with what they're doing. So we're at a natural pausing point anyway. But there's that. And then the final thing is as you all know, there's a couple of final boxes that we have to check to receive our 8% payment from the VCBB for the completion of our phase 1. So one of those things was the Luck Grove physical inspection, and we received that approval letter, 2 weeks or so ago. Steve and I had a call with Christine and CTC yesterday around some of the nuances of that, but suffice to say there's no problems. And then the other thing that we have to do is we have to give them the as-built in electronic form. So they want to know what exactly we've built and a whole bunch of details around it. So Todd Garthafner from Waitsfield is the one that's going to be actually doing that work for us. He's taking the red lines that Syracuse has done on paper markup of staking sheets and is going to be updating the Vantage Point designs that he's imported into the map system, and also enhancing it with a number of things that are VCBB requirements that aren't actually part of an engineering design. So he and I had a very productive call on Monday to go through that, and most of it he either can get or derive. There's a couple of things I need to compile for him, which won't take me more than maybe an hour, but I need to sit down and do it. And I haven't been really pressing him for a time frame on that, but he is definitely actively working on it. But I think it'll be a couple of weeks before we have that in. The other thing was, I think I mentioned it at the governing board, but not all of you were at the governing board. So I discovered when I was reviewing, there's a whole bunch of little details in these contracts. Like one of the things that I flagged for VCBB is that the BEAD subrecipients capacity support program contracts indicate that we need to finish all of our work by the end of January of 2025. that doesn't work so well with our scope, because one of the things in our scope is third-party review of the completed grant applications, which aren't scheduled. That window doesn't even open now until whenever it is, March. So I flagged for them that they're going to need to be extending that. Well, there's something I was going to say, but I forgot what it was. Oh dear. Anyway, it may come back to me.
Ellie, I took time this morning to take a quick look at the recording of last week's meeting, and you did make mention of the construction grant amendment, which did come up at the VCBB meeting. I guess it wouldn't hurt to mention that again, since we did get to go on that. I think the one thing I wanted to just observe from the outside is that I think reasonably, Ellie believes we were in pretty good graces with VCBB, because we're getting everything done properly, and we're getting it done on time, and we're getting it done under budget. And I think perhaps that's why we got it pretty quickly sorted out. But Ellie had a moment or two in front of the VCBB earlier this week, and they approved that grant amendment. And as a reminder, it was either return the excess funds to the VCBB or use those excess funds to continue construction. It wasn't a lot of construction, but it feeds into what we're trying to accomplish. So I think she made the right decision, and we had no objections on the part of VCBB, so that got accomplished too.
Okay. Any questions for me?
What are you doing in your spare time?
Sleeping. I don't know. And I think also, just to repeat here, the customer service automated emails from London Middlebury, those were put live right before the governing board meeting. So just in case anyone didn't get that memo, those are now going out. So that's good. I haven't seen anyone, because I think the info ad is the reply to address. I haven't seen anyone replying and saying, what the heck is this, or anything like that yet. But hopefully that'll be a very positive step forward. Okay. All right. So moving on. Unless are there any questions? I didn't think there were. Okay. So I'm moving on. So the audit update, I have just a very brief update. Sai is obviously not here. Sai is out visiting grandchild. She's going to be back next week, she said. But we have been working through some additional things requested by Bonnie, one of which is things like the skills of the people who review the financial statements and so on and so forth. So we Googled you, Jeff, so that we could we could write up a paragraph, a couple sentences about your skills. So I don't have any other audit updates because Sai's not here, but I wasn't quite sure if Sai would show up or not, so I wanted to leave it on the schedule. So sorry, that's not much of an update, but that's what I have. Okay, Q3 financials. Or do you have something on the audit, Jeff? You're muted.
Getting there.
Here we go.
Do we have any reason for concern about getting the audit wrapped up? I mean, really, if they're down to something like that's the issue, it would not seem to be material.
Okay, so there is one other thing. This wasn't excluded out of intent. I just wasn't thinking of it. So the auditor has noted some discrepancies between what our QuickBooks says and what our ledgers for the VCBB say, and the amounts are larger than what would be accounted for between the difference between cash flow and accrual. So I spent some time looking at that a couple of days ago, and I found a couple of things. And I sent them back to Sai, but she hasn't had a chance to weigh in on them. So there's that. But I'm not really sure. Yeah, I'm not really sure how that relates to the audit. 'Cause it's a good thing for the auditor to be looking at, I suppose, just to make sure we're in compliance with our federal grant and we aren't misreporting things. And I think that some of it probably also has to do just with some of the journaling and the other things that we've flagged, where this was a difficult period when we had a handover because we had April was our bookkeeper for a while, and then Darlene came on, and Darlene was coming up to speed, and a lot of this is really old at this point now because it's taken us so long to get here. So there's a little bit of digging back into ancient history. But I think that when Sai gets back next week, we'll get to the bottom of this because that's the only substantive thing that I'm aware of right now.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure it rises to the level of needing to be concerned because we just need to figure out what's going on.
Understood. Thank you for the follow-up on that. I assume this will remain an agenda topic until it's closed.
Yep, it sure will. I mean, amongst other things, in order to submit our BEAD application, we need to submit our audit. So I suppose not that this thing should be dragging out until whenever the new BEAD application window is, but we do need to wrap this up. It's starting to become, I don't even know the right word. It's starting to become the sort of thing that I don't want to have on my to-do list anymore.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly should be closed before Lynn comes on as treasurer. Okay. Actually, since we're speaking of Lynn, I'll just give a brief update now. So she's going away for a couple of weeks vacation. She's getting back in mid-November or like early November. So Sai and I are going to start our transition or our onboarding of Lynn from mid-November. So I've said that I will start with just a general organizational background and big picture kind of thing. And then Sai will dig in with the more detailed treasurer things. And then I imagine over the month of December, we will get into the workflow details and make sure that everything is comfortable. Lynn and Sai, between the two of them, have tentatively set that Lynn would take over as treasurer officially from the 1st of January. But this is, of course, contingent on her feeling comfortable that she knows what she has to do and being able to do it. So, and she's received the invites to these meetings and will start coming at some point. So, very excited for that too.
I think that's a real good addition for us. I hadn't seen Lynn in quite some time, so in looking at her updated resume, it appears she's taken a professional turn since I last worked with her. I think that's to our benefit as well. But her, very deep financial knowledge was from prior years, but a good range and understanding of fund accounting, especially if she was CFO at the Community Foundation. So I think a real good addition for us.
And one of the things that you can maybe noodle on, since we're kind of off topic, but on the general topic of finance, is I think we've discussed this before, but we've never really had a finance committee that's met recently. And with Lynn coming on, when she comes on, it may make sense to see if we want to do that. And even if it's just you, Jeff, and me and Lynn, so that we're talking about some of this financial details and not everyone is having to listen along to all the things and we have more time. And one of the things that I want to spend some time thinking about is we have this financial dashboard and it has a bunch of things on it that we show to the governing board every month. But I'm wondering if we could really distill down to a couple of smaller quarterly KPIs that we really focus on. So some of the ones that we've been talking about, for example, is, where are we in relation to break even? How much cash is in the bank? Things like that. So if you could maybe just start thinking, I mean, all of you can apply your minds to it, but Jeff in particular, if there's some really, like, what are the key KPIs if we had to distill this down to really an executive summary of the executive summary? Because I kind of feel like the governing board probably doesn't need to go through every single stat every single month. We could send them the details, but it might be better to have something which is a little more high level snapshot of what's going on, rather than getting into the weeds every month. So just a thought I had.
Good one.
Okay, so let's move on. The Q3 financials have been distributed. Does anyone have any comments or questions? You can go ahead, Jeff.
Okay.
I'll do my best to answer them.
I'm interested in the relationship between, and this is on the balance sheet, on the relationship between the accounts receivable and the accounts payable. And I see that, in the last quarter, we've added to our construction in progress. So this is showing the results of continued construction. The balance sheet and total assets is growing, all to the good. I'm just trying to confirm and align with some of the forecasting I've seen and about where we're going to end up at the end of the year, cash-wise. So, in short, looks to me like we owe $1.1 million, the bulk of which is probably for construction. And then we have a fairly good sized receivable out there. Is all of that receivable or most of it to pay for that construction?
So the receivable, now please don't quote me on this because I'm not actually in QuickBooks, but my understanding is that receivable, the bulk of it is that outstanding invoice to VCBB for the 8% of phase 1 construction plus some customer revenues. And the bulk of accounts payable, if you want to get into it here, we need to go into executive session, or I can give you a call after.
No, you understand what I'm getting at. We've got some bills that are due. I'm trying to understand the sources of cash to pay for that. So
okay. I think what I'll say at this point is that my belief is that the vast majority of that is not a short-term accounts payable.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I'll be happy to walk you through it separately.
Fair enough. Otherwise, I don't. Yeah, I don't have further questions on the financials. Others may.
Why not walk through it?
Nancy, you emailed recently about
Yeah,
this topic.
I know. I understand. Why not go into executive session and walk through it?
We can. It's up to you. Someone needs to make the motion, though.
Yeah, I'll take care of that. One moment. I move to find that premature general public knowledge regarding Maple Broadband's business strategy could clearly place us at a substantial disadvantage because it risks disclosure of our activities if they were to be communicated to the public. Is there a second? Okay,
second.
All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
I move that we enter into executive session to discuss business strategy under Title I, Section 313, subsection A of the Vermont statutes. Is there a second? We've got a. Oh, sorry, thank you, Nancy. Looking around, I was expecting Shannon to do it. What's wrong with you, Shannon?
You missed him. He put his hand down too quickly.
Keeping me on my toes, yeah. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Okay, we are in executive session.
Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.